Space Cowboy Books presents Simultaneous Times, a science and speculative fiction podcast. Short stories to stir the imagination by contemporary authors.
The Folded Balloon by Thomas Ha, with music by TSG, read by Jean-Paul Garnier. Occasionally, I like to fold time and space in my dreams. Not unlike the way you might fold a towel fresh from the dryer, or a sheet of origami paper, side to side and doubled over, so that places that would otherwise not meet do. Last night when I folded, I dreamt that we knew each other before, much younger than we were when we got together. Instead, we were in college, I think, now that I try my best to remember. There was banter and chatter, a kind of heightened sensation and charge to everything we said. And somewhere between classes and drinks and sweltering, sweaty house parties, we got to know each other much as we eventually did. But with long hungover naps and cramped twin beds and grassy spring afternoons on crowded lawns, libraries and coffee shops and the still air of empty lecture halls. It was nice, sharing a brightness we never actually had the chance to share. But I also think I'd forgotten what it was really like then, how things felt so vivid and fatal and threatening, how I hid in my books and films and did my best to remain very still. Whereas you were always moving and meeting and doing other things, maybe never quite sure what would satisfy your interest and growing curiosity. I think I tried to smother little moments that felt like deviations from where I wanted us to go, much as a younger me would have done with the partners I'd had. And you slammed doors and screamed extreme pronouncements and sulked rather than shared what you really thought, much as a younger you would have done with your partners too. And like nearly every other relationship at that age, ours cracked apart at some point, between alternating explosions and chilly listlessness, that sort of classic and inescapable celestial collapse. There were other folds, though, where we met earlier, as young teenagers, just on the cusp of forming the awkward edges of our identities. And I drew your eye almost right away, much to my surprise. I had a middle part in my hair and baggy cargo shorts, things you've since laughed at when flipping through my family photos. I was wiry and gangly and brooding all the time. You had those thick glasses and tangled hair, and I'm not sure I looked your way much at all, at first. But we both liked anime, chatting on Instant Messenger, listening to Linkin Park on the radio, and spending hours in parking lots and malls and the back of movie theaters. And I don't remember why things didn't work out, except for the vague feeling that we weren't moving in a similar direction. Some writer, I think perhaps Murakami or someone else, described it like drifting in separate boats with only a frayed twine in our hands to connect us. And it felt like that. Like we were being buffeted by so many bigger things. Our families, our schools, or painful fights with friends. All sorts of emotions and changes churning around in frigid water. And of course, those two boats and that little twine didn't stand the slightest chance. Luckily, there were many folds when we were younger still. Children with very little barriers between us and others, happier and sadder for it, though we were just barely aware of that fact. And I liked this fold most because the years there were less lonely than they otherwise really were. And there was someone to walk with me to the library and wait the hours when our parents worked. And there was someone near you to grip your hand and say fuck off to the kids who teased you because of your clothes. We played with origami. Not real origami, since I didn't know where or how to buy it, but computer paper I'd learned to cut into a square, and I showed you my favorite shape. Not the fortune teller, or the crane, or the frog, which most kids preferred, but the balloon. A kind of diamond with folded sides, where you would blow an end until it puffed into a stout little box. Somehow, like that, with you and me together, the long hours that I'd previously filled with imaginary friends were momentarily replaced with better glimmers and shadows. Even though those comforting alternatives were no easier to hold on to than real memories at that age, just flickers of senses and smells and distorted pictures meant to be replaced later with photographs and stories, I suppose. When I wake afterward, here, where our bodies are bigger and softer and intertwined, the world with its time flattened and unfolded, where we really met and lived as slow, hurt beings, the place containing money and lost things, and that ever-growing feeling of never quite being rested. I remember something of those other folds. And over my morning coffee, when I recount the dreams to you, I recall, partway through, that the origami balloon was unpopular because it wasn't elegant like the crane, or fun to fiddle with like the frog or fortune teller. It got soaked with spit at the ends and crumpled easily, prone to losing structure and pointless seeming when deflated and squashed. But I can still feel it there, in my fingers somehow. The process of folding it and filling it with breath, and folding it and filling it with breath, and folding it and filling it with breath, as many times as I could before it deteriorated. Any other set of folds, and it wouldn't be that balloon. And I'm drawn to that very specific series of folds. Drawn to it, even here and now, I realize. You ask, then, what I think we should eat for breakfast. And like always, I forget what I was even saying just moments ago. Accidental Curses by Jenna Hanchey, with music by Fog Machine, read by the author.
A little help here? My sister had returned from our parents' house, arms bulging with packages, which was expected, but also limping, which was not. I grabbed the handle right as the door slipped off Aline's jutting hip and relieved her of 2 sweaters, a heap of Bath & Body Works products, and half a chocolate cake. I winced at her left foot. What did Mom do this time? Plantar fasciitis, apparently. Treatable? Unclear. I grabbed some insoles on the way home in case, though I don't know if they'll fit in my heels. And you can't ruin your outfit for dancing next weekend. I winked. Don't worry, I'm pretty proficient at the minor medical curses now. Catalyst? Aline collapsed onto the couch with a groan, scattering discount cat toys from an overturned bag. A commercial for orthopedic shoes. One minute we're talking about Dad's birthday party, and the next she's staring at the TV saying, "Oh, honey, weren't you saying your foot hurt last week? It's probably plantar fasciitis." And bam, here we are. Jem, if we have to ward against everything she could possibly see on TV, I don't know. How are we going to keep this up? Take away their TV? My joke fell flat. It wasn't really about the plantar fasciitis or the TV. Mom's curses were just getting too ubiquitous to brush off anymore. We'd managed to ward against typical worries, and thankfully, Mom's white Midwestern sensibility made most major violences unutterable. But her anxiety-driven imagination was starting to outpace our ability to ward against it. Do you think it's time we tell her? Aline posed the question while avoiding my eyes, focused on returning an absurd number of toys for our singular cat back into the TJ Maxx bag. I sat down next to her on the couch. Mom can't even handle us saying we don't need any more toys for Tigger. How do you think she'll respond if we're like, "Oh hey, did you ever notice that all the bad things you worry might happen to people tend to come true immediately after you say them out loud? Yeah, you're making them happen with magic you don't know you have. So not only are you a witch, but you've been using your copious untapped powers to curse people for years." Her little Christian heart would explode. Maybe literally. So we just let her keep believing she's helping? Jem, something could happen that we can't fix someday. Aline finished scooping up the toys and placed an elbow on the top of the couch, finally turning to look at me. Eventually, something will. I grimaced. I know. You're right, but what can we say? Magic is incompatible with her worldview. If she knew we were witches, she'd write us off as pawns of the devil. If she knew she was a witch, it would break her brain. Maybe Dad? Aline didn't finish the sentence. Dad was a witch too, but neither of us really knew the extent of his ability or his relationship to it. He definitely noticed our warding, but he neither bolstered it nor took it down. Their house was a sort of magical don't ask, don't tell zone. Dad was an unknown quantity. Maybe we could use his party next week. It'll be an anxiety hotbed. We lower our wards. She's actually faced with multiple examples of the consequences of her speech all at once, and voila! She has to take it seriously. Curse accelerationism? Jem, that's a terrible plan. Aline chewed her lip. Tigger passed by our feet, and she brought him into her lap. Besides, it would still break her brain. It'd just do it faster and harder. No, we need something more gentle. How do you gently tell someone they're cursing everyone they love? We sat in silence for a few seconds before our hands bumped into each other as we simultaneously reached out to stroke the cat. How's your foot? I glanced at Aline's heeled suede boots as she stepped into the hallway, and then back to the bathroom mirror where I was using Aline's animation spell to get my lipstick to look decent. I never wore makeup, but Dad's 70th birthday party was going to be one for the books. At least I'd look pretty when shit hit the fan. Aline leaned on the doorway, crossing her arms. Those insoles are pretty rad. My foot is fine, but my nerves are not. Are you sure this is the best way to get her to stop? Well, it's better than my last plan. Setting a family of raccoons on the party would have been better than your last plan. She sighed. And Dad can do this? The lipstick tube drifted slowly down to the counter as I evaluated my reflection. I guess we'll see, but it's the gentlest idea we had. We traveled to the party in silence. Aline sat in the driver's seat, hands lightly placed on the wheel, but not really paying attention. She must have activated the automatic driving spell we used when coming home from a particularly enthusiastic night out. Jem? Yeah, Aline? Why do you think Mom worries so much about everything? Well, it's partly undiagnosed anxiety. You remember what I was like before meds. Mix that with decades of defining your worth by how much service you do for others, not to mention the state of your soul, and you get someone who's afraid that any missed chance to help could be a matter of eternal life or death. That would be pretty heavy to carry. I watched the lights pass by, waiting for Aline to let me in on what was occupying her mind. Do you ever worry that if she can cast accidental curses, maybe we can as well? What if our fear that she can't handle knowing about her power is what makes it real? My chest felt like a vacuum, pulling my mind down into it. For all the jokes we make about Mom, I think you really did break my brain. I'm serious, Jem. I'm sorry, so am I. I touched a fingertip to the window, tracing a path through the thin layer of fog accumulating on the glass, mapping possibilities. If it was magic, I think we'd know. Our training has been haphazard, but we've done a lot of work to understand our power and what it's capable of, even when it's been painful. Yeah, I remember you got so nervous about throwing up before the 5th grade play that you cursed yourself and missed the show. You were so proud when you finally made it through the whole variety show in high school. And I remember when you animated your first toy and couldn't make it stop. We had to lock that terrifying Barbie consort in the closet for months until you figured out how to refine your control. Oh, poor Magnus. He would scratch obsessively at the closet door. What I'm saying is, we are so very aware of the power we hold and how it can go wrong. And we put a lot of effort into learning every day how to handle it better. My paths drawn on the window coalesced until there was no more condensation to wipe off. We are not doing this to Mom. Not magically. But we aren't giving her the credit she deserves. Aline nodded. She clasped the wheel, taking control back. She deserves to hear the truth, Jem. What Mom does, she thinks she's responsible for other people's lives, and it ends up hurting both her and them. We're not responsible for whether or not she believes the truth. That's on her. But it's on us to tell her, to give her information, and trust she can make her own decisions. When did you get so wise, huh? Jealous, big sis? Yeah, a little. I should have thought of that. Given the plans you've been coming up with, your brain clearly is broken. Hey! I smacked her lightly on the shoulder. At least we won't have to have Dad pretend to be the voice of God tonight.
Yeah, your script is atrocious. Lisa, be no longer afraid for your loved ones. Your prayers have been answered. All your worries must cease.
Aline giggled so hard she snorted. I crossed my arms. Look, you try sounding like an all-powerful god and trying to get someone not to be scared. No wonder angels come across so awkward. It's hard. When Aline caught her breath, she came back to the point.
When are we going to tell her then?
Soon. But first, let's let Dad celebrate his 70th birthday in peace.
No raccoons.
No raccoons, I agreed. Aline gave me a comforting glance before turning back to the road.
We'll figure it out. We always do. And even though it doesn't seem like it, Jem, I think telling the truth is the gentlest we can be.
In this episode of Simultaneous Times, you heard The Folded Balloon by Thomas Ha, with music by TSG, and Accidental Curses by Jenna Hanchey, with music by Fog Machine. Theme music by Dane Lesko. Be sure to visit us at our bookstore in Joshua Tree, California, or visit us online at spacecowboybooks.com.